It's all good and well that Minister of Mineral Resources and Energy, Gwede Mantashe, has announced the 8 successful independent power producer bidders. But now we need the detail. How will this work? How much will it cost? And what guarantees do we have that they will deliver on the extra capacity needed to power the country by August next year? I'm joined now by Jacob Mbele, the Deputy Director General at the Department of Mineral Resources. He is responsible for, among other things, this particular issue around the additional generation capacity, renewables, and the IPPs and the like. So he's here to answer a few of the questions that we have. Mr. Mbele, good afternoon. Thank you for talking to me. So, you know, there's been a lot of pressure on Eskom, and rightly so. The Eskom CEO, Andre de Ruyter, coming under significant pressure around issues of not being able to curb load shedding, and rightly so. He should take the pressure he took on the job. But let me suggest to you, but you are also, as a department, partly to blame, because, you know, it's a bit like giving him a fleet of vehicles in the form of the power stations for him to power the country, but actually you're not fueling as much as you should be fueling those vehicles, in that the additional generation capacity that has been promised is just not forthcoming, Mr. Mbele.
No, good afternoon to you. Let me first start by saying, I think from the planning point of view, which is what the department is responsible for, we are responsible for planning and ensuring that we bring online a new additional capacity. In around 2010, we introduced what we call the Integrated Resource Plan. And following on the back of that, we procured over 6,000 megawatts of renewable energy to complement additional capacity by Eskom. But at the same time, parallel to that process, Eskom was busy with 3 projects, Medupi, Ingula, and Kusile. So from the new capacity point of view, there has been a lot of work that has happened both on the Eskom side and through the IPP program in terms of renewable energy.
So if you are saying that since 2010 we've added some 6,000 megawatts in as far as new generation capacity in addition to Medupi, Kusile and Ingula, why do we keep seeing load shedding from a generation perspective? Let's put aside whatever systemic issues that Eskom are playing themselves out. Is it a matter of, as much as we are adding generation capacity, we are also losing generation capacity at the same time?
That is the problem, Thulasizwe, is when you do the planning for the future, one of the assumptions that you make is that the base that you have will be there. And yes, you adopt an approach in terms of how that base, as you know, time go by, will come offline. But what we're experiencing is that some of the base, which is mainly the Eskom plants, are not performing as expected, and therefore, yes, creating a shortage. But the other issue that we have is that we all know that Medupi and Kusile should have been completed around 2012, 2013. And there have been delays, but not only delays. Eskom has publicly indicated that these plants themselves are not performing to the expected capacity. Actually, in addition to the 6,000 that you are referring to, there's another about 12, 13,000 megawatts that Eskom itself had brought online. But unfortunately, due to other challenges that they have with those plants, obviously you experience this problem where the full 12, 13,000 that's supposed to be coming from those plants is not actually always available.
And so now then, to the heart of why I invited you and wanted to speak to you, you have introduced, there's another acronym here, RMI and quadruple P. RMI quadruple P, the Risk Mitigation Independent Power Procurement Program. How will this solve the problem?
What we're trying to do with the risk mitigation is that we have realized that this erratic performance by some of the Eskom power plants are going to create a shortage in supply, and the load shedding that we've seen has actually confirmed that. And in terms of the integrated resource plan that we published in 2019, we then indicated that the country needs to undertake urgent procurement of additional capacity. And by urgent procurement, what others call emergency power, we meant that we need to procure power from projects that are able to bring power onto the grid as quick as possible. A typical grid-type power project will take you about 36 months before it comes online. And with this program, the intention was to target those projects that were at advanced preparatory stages or preparation stages to be able to get them to connect to the grid in between 12 and 18 months. So we're hoping if we can get these projects as planned to connect online, we'll actually minimize the impact of load shedding going forward.
And your target is August 2022, and it's 8 power producers that use various mechanisms that were recently announced by the Minister Gwede Mantashe. But there's much interest around the organization called Powerships and the 3 what President Ramaphosa used to refer to as floating capacity, those 3 ships that will be stationed at Saldanha, Kucha and Richards Bay. What exactly will these 3 ships be doing, and what are the details of that particular deal with Powerships?
Maybe let me start by indicating that the announcement of the 8 preferred bidders was an outcome of a bidding process, open bidding process that anyone could have participated in. And there was about 28 responses that were received, and out of those 28 responses, 11 responses made the cut on the basis of the criteria that was put in place. And the technical criteria that we had in place was not even a criteria determined by the department, but it's a criteria, or the technical requirements were requirements as provided by what we call the system operator, which are the people that decide whether we are going to go into load shedding or not. They look at supply and demand and try and balance the system on a daily basis. So the technical requirements came from that. And what they had indicated a specific requirements in terms of the kind of solutions they would want to see providing power into the grid. So the 8 preferred bidders is part of the 11 that made the cut into the 2,000 megawatts that we had put out. One of the peculiar things about this procurement was that the system operator asked for flexible generation, meaning that they wanted power that if they can call in as and when necessary. And globally, it is known that you can do that with a number of solutions. You can combine renewables with battery storage, or you can combine renewables with gas. In this regard, the 3 ships provided a gas-based solution, which basically meets the requirement, the technical specification of Eskom. But at the same time, the price that they bid was amongst the lowest prices in terms of the bidders that we had bid.
Yeah, so please talk about that particular aspect, Mr. Mbele. The aspect of pricing. You will have seen the criticism around the term of that contract, that it's a 20-year contract, which is rather a long term, but also with variables such as the prices of liquefied natural gas coming into play there, meaning that, you know, it will be fluctuating a bit like the petrol price that is adjusted almost on a monthly basis. What will we be paying per kilowatt hour, and how does that square up with, you know, what other sources of energy would have cost us?
Yes, I think to respond to that question, one must first start with as I indicated, the specification in terms of what the grid requirements are. So the first comparison we should make is to compare apples with apples, right? So far, hence I indicated that you will need gas. If you look at what we'll be paying compared to other solutions that just use, as an example, renewables, including battery storage, what we'll be paying in terms of the price that's been presented to us is comparable. Yes, if you look into the future, there is a possibility that there will be the ups and downs in terms of the price that the power from these ships could come from, due to obviously the fluctuation in the fuel price. But I think it needs to also be looked into in context. First, if you look at the integrated resource plan, gas into the future, it is part of the energy mix. We need it to be able to balance the system. So the characteristic of the price of gas and how it plays into the energy space is something that we're not going to avoid. That's the first thing. The second point that one wants to make is that even there are mechanisms in the regulatory frameworks that are there to manage the fluctuations. Instead of, like in the case of petrol, where the price of electricity will go up every month, in the electricity sector, we've got what we call the regulatory clearance account, which is the balancing that happens on an annual basis. And this is something that has been applied for Eskom for years to deal with fluctuations in price of coal and other fuel that Eskom is using. So it's nothing new. But again, the noise around the volumes of gas that this risk mitigation is going to come with needs to be looked into context. The volume per annum that will come from this kind of power is about 2.5% of what Eskom annually has to supply. Eskom supplies close to 208 terawatt hours of energy in a year. This project is 5 terawatt hours. So if you blend it into the Eskom cost and tariff, actually it is possible that the users will see very little fluctuation in the price of electricity. So it's a volumes game as well.
Lastly, Mr. Mbele,
we believe that people are blowing out of proportion.
As I run out of time, Mr. Mbele, the figure of around 11 US cents per kilowatt hour, are those anywhere close to what we're looking at in terms of the cost? How does that measure up with what it costs to generate right now?
All right. I haven't done the conversion to US cents, but what I can tell you is that, I mean, on average, I think for these gas to power, we're looking at about R1.55 per kilowatt hour. And if you look at all the 8 projects, there are pure renewable-based projects that are coming in at R1.60, R1.70. So the cost is comparable to the other costs of other alternative technologies.
And overall, was it prudent, in your view, to contract for 20 years? And while you're answering that, also add the issue of the figure that's been touted of 218 billion rand, about 10.9 billion rand a year. That's not, that's not pocket change.
Let me start with the question you asked around, was it prudent? In 2010, when the country wanted to introduce independent power producers, one of the things that was done was introduce what we call the Renewable Independent Power Producer Program, Renewable Energy Independent Power Producer Program. And one of the instruments we adopted at that point in time was to say, for these projects to be affordable and for investors to also come on board, we needed to give them a certain term of contracting. By the way, the 20-year that we're talking about is not different to the 20-year that we've signed with the Renewable Energy Independent Power Producer Program. So this is not a condition that was just introduced for this bidding round. It's something that has been there. And the tenure is generally a function of affordability. If we had taken all the 11 projects, which, by the way, I emphasize includes renewable energy, and we had said, let's do them in 5 years, I can tell you that all of them would have come close to 8 Rand, 10 Rand per kilowatt hour, which we know that it would have not been affordable as it gets incorporated into the tariffs. So I think it needs to be looked into that context. And the 218, I think sometimes, how we present information can be misleading. Like you said, it's 10.8, you said it's 10 point something billion per annum. What the picture is not showing is that if you take the total projects that will be procuring, in total, they will come close to 18, 19 billion. right? So what we decided to do here is to just focus, ignore the fact that for the other energy, which consists of other technologies as well, you'll be paying about 8-9 billion. We just focus on one element because we believe probably because it goes to a single company. And then we say, no, this company will be getting, 10 billion out of this thing. But again, it's 10 billion before the cost of providing the kilowatt hour. So it's not 10 billion for free. At the end of the day, they have to provide the power. They have to buy the fuel. And similar with other projects, the same thing is made provision for. So this cost must be looked at in context. If you take it in 20 years, overall, all these projects will probably culminate into, if you take it and you project it in terms of the kilowatt hours that will be consumed, you're looking probably at about 350 to 400 billion rand. And for me, it's a bit silly to single out half of what will go to one technology and make it look like it is wrong, or it is the way it's structured, it favors one project.
Mr. Mbele, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. I sort of kept you for a while there because, these are, in as much as they are a bit technical matters, but actually these are matters of much interest for us as a country facing the energy situation there. That's Jacob Mbele. He's one of the Deputy Directors General at the Department of Mineral Resources. He deals with issues to do with additional generation capacity, as well as the Independent Power Producer Program. In fact, he is, I'm told he's busy with that particular issue around bid window 5 of the IPPs, and certainly we ran out of time before we could get to that particular issue. But there you have it. I wanted you to get a sort of a clearer picture. It's complex, and I hope energy experts can come back and give us a sense of whether or not we're getting bang for our buck in as far as these 8 projects that were announced recently that are meant to come on stream in August 2022 to ease our woes around issues of energy generation. He's talking about all the projects, all 8 of them. You're looking at anything between 350 and 400 billion rand for all of them, all 8, over a period of some 20 years. Are we getting bang for our buck? That is the question.